Now, live to Stephen Jones, Shadow Assistant Treasurer and Shadow Financial Services Minister, for more on a lot of things happening in the economy at the moment. We'll start with the RBA speech last night. Do you think that there is truth in the fact that the RBA governor said that the worst of the hit to the economy is over?
Oh, look, it was a fairly subdued outlook from the Reserve Bank governor on the future of the economy. I think that the thing that he honed in on was we've got a lot of problems internationally, and we've got a lack of confidence and a lack of income, a lack of money at the household sector, which is subduing household consumption. The big thing that he said, which was underlying the need for action from the government, the big thing that is going to have to shift for us to get a significant shift in the Australian economy is to increase wages, because that's the thing that's going to move household consumption. There was a bit of a backhanded slap to government, state and federal for the caps that they've had on their own public sector wages. But the big thing that he's honing in on is if we're going to get growth, if we're going to get sustained growth, then we're going to get wages moving again.
The thing is, the government said that the best way to get wages moving is to get more money in the economy. They've put through those tax cuts. Is that not putting more money back in people's pockets?
Look, the most optimistic outlook, as indicated by the RBA governor, is a 0.6% increase in household income. If we were to map exactly what had gone in previous years, in previous decades, about 50% of that's a 0.3% kick up in household consumption. That's a pretty modest outlook, but I've got to say, what economists are telling us, particularly bank economists are telling us at the moment, is that they're not seeing anything like that. That is to say, people are banking the additional money that they're getting from tax cuts. They're using it to pay down debt. They're using it to pay off their credit card, because they've had to use their credit card to pay for utilities and other expenses, because these big lumpy prices are going up, these big lumpy expenditures are going up. So I'm not as confident as many as others are that we are going to see a flow through from these tax cuts into household consumption, because the evidence is simply just not there at the moment.
Isn't there a flow-on effect, though, if you do use that money to pay down your debt, that there will be longer term more money for you to play with?
Yeah, but the problem we have is right now, Annalise, and this is why Labor is saying we need a multi-pronged approach. We can't just say, well, we've done the tax cuts, that's it, we'll return to the grandstands and watch everyone else play the game. What the government's got to do is have a multi-pronged approach. We're proposing bringing forward another round of the tax cuts, not scheduled to take place to 21-22. We're proposing bringing forward the infrastructure spending, and I was interested to hear your previous speaker say that, well, this is our big achievement. We've got a $100 billion infrastructure fund. Of course, the truth is over 70% of that $100 billion doesn't get spent for another 4 to 5 years, well beyond the next election. Let's bring forward some of that spending, particularly in regional areas where employment is sagging, where the need for infrastructure is great, and where we don't have capacity constraints. That money could be put to use immediately in building some of those much needed infrastructure projects, road, rail and port projects in regional Australia.
There's a really interesting story out today in the Financial Review about default super funds, with data provided by a Choice affiliate, Choice Consumer Group there. And they've looked at the number of funds in the worst 25% of performing funds, and some of them really are quite poor. 5-year return rate for BT Super for Life was 6.67%, LUCRF was 6.88%, Suncorp Life Stage 6.85%, same, very similar for Asgard and CBA Accumulate as well. What do you make of the fact that we have so many Australians, it's about $170,000 in the worst 5 performing super funds out there? What would Labor do to fix this that you think the government should be doing?
Well, we've got to have a focus on performance. Persistently underperforming funds, no excuse. We've got to have a focus on performance, and it makes a significant difference over the course of a worker's life. Upwards of $500,000 difference in monies available for retirement income if you're in the lowest performing funds as compared to the highest performing funds. That's a person on the same income over the course of a working life. They could have $500,000 difference in retirement incomes if they're in the bottom performing as opposed to the top performing funds. So we're encouraging the regulators to get their skates on measuring performance. We think this is the big issue. I mean, you've got government MPs out there talking about attacking the increase in superannuation through already legislated SGL increases. We say leave those alone, but let's focus on performance. We don't want to be punishing the people in the high-performing funds who are relying on those increases to superannuation over the next 6-7 years to ensure they have a high retirement income. Let's focus on the fund performance, because you're going to get as much bang for your buck in focusing on underperforming funds as you are on winding back already bipartisan reforms that have been agreed to. Now, if we do focus on the performance...
But what would you do to fix it? That's it. Like, we know what the problem is. Like, clearly that's quite well outlined here, but what would you do to fix it?
Yeah, look, there's a whole bunch of things that need to be done. We need to have a publicly agreed benchmark for measuring the performance of those funds. You've got Industry Funds Australia out there. We've already done some benchmarking. You've got this announcement today by the newly formed Superannuation Consumers Group, both of them welcomed. You've got both the Royal Commission and the Productivity Commission hinting that we need to have a publicly agreed independent form of benchmarking of the performance of superannuation funds, and consequences for those trustees and for those funds that are consistently and persistently underperforming. Of course, consumers don't need to leave it to the government to make a move, and we've already seen over the course of the Royal Commission a flood of consumers moving from one sector or one fund to another, because they could see once the spotlight has been put on it, that they want to see their money put into a high-performing fund. So we've got to be sector neutral. It doesn't matter whether it's the retail sector, the industry sector, the corporate sector. The focus has to be on performance and an independent spotlight, an independent benchmark on how those funds are performing, so the consumers know.
We're running out of time, but just finally, I would be interested to get your thoughts on these new funds that are used to promote ethical causes. You know, that we've seen a rise in super funds that only invest in green energy and things like that. Is that incongruous with the purpose of superannuation, which is to make the most money? Is that like an abrogation of the fact that the entire thing is supposed to be just getting the highest returns possible?
Look, I don't think consumers, I don't think fund members should have to make a choice between ethical investment and between getting a fantastic return on their super investments. I think you can do both. And the message that I've been giving consistently to those who've been calling on superannuation funds to skew one way or another, I say the purpose of superannuation funds is to provide decent retirement incomes. As the business world is shifting, and we're already seeing in the insurance sector, in the banking sector, towards understanding that for a sustainable global economy, for a sustainable business, that we have to be investing in more renewables, we have to be converting to sustainable businesses. I think those two purposes are going to be increasingly aligned.
Stephen Jones, thank you for your time.